Okay, now that we have our basic skin weights blocked in, it's going to come down to refining them to try to create nice smooth deformations across the mesh. So my workflow for doing this is to first create a really simple animation with the mesh so I can see what it looks like as it deforms. If you're just trying to paint skin weights on the default pose, you don't really know whether or not that's going to work properly when the character starts moving. So what I'll do is I'll select this control, and this one, and I'm going to go in and set a key for that. And I'm going to come out here to frame 10, and I'm going to just rotate this backwards a bit. So you see there's a lot of stretching and weird stuff going on here and compression. So it's certainly that stuff that we want to attend to. And I'll just key that again. And at frame 11, I'm just going to go back to frame 1, middle mouse click and drag my frame out to frame 11 and press S there to key that. And now in frame 20, I'm going to do the same thing but down. So basically, instead of having to go through and rotate these controls each time I want to change something, which means I'd be constantly moving out of the paint tool and then back into it and be a lot of extra hassle, it's much faster and easier to just create a basic animation that you can scrub through. So I'm going to focus on the head going back first because I want to start dealing with this area where there's a lot of stretching going on. So I'm going to come in here, go to my Paint Skin Weights tool, and we're going to start out with the head control. And what we'll notice here is that it's a very sharp drop-off between these points, between these two different sections, and it really gets exacerbated when you look at it stretched. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with my paint mode selected. Add is fine, but I'm probably going to change the value down to something like 0.1. But what I'm actually going to start with first, before anything else, is to smooth. So to change the brush size using this brush is just holding down the B key, B as in brush, and then left mouse clicking and dragging will increase or decrease the size of the brush. So I want this to be fairly large. And like in ZBrush, holding down the Shift key will go into smooth mode. So I'm going to smooth out the transition between these two sections of skin weights. I might go a little bit smaller there. Okay, and trying to get a nice even blend. I'm going to worry about really the front at the moment. Now, here's the thing. I don't really need to worry about this side here because I can mirror over what I have on this side. So, that's one half of the equation. The other side of this is going to be Neko2, which is, you can see here, is also quite blocky. But we're getting some interesting, strange things happening here. So let's just go back. As I try to paint this, or try to smooth this out, it's not behaving the way I would expect. And here's the reason why. For some reason, and I don't know why, we've all of a sudden ended up with influence here from Neko1, and that might have resulted from my brush being a little bit too big to start with. So what I want to do is I'm going to paint that out. I'll go to replace, set the value to 0, and this is going to change all the values of these vertices to whatever I have indicated as my value. That's what replace does. So I'm just going to paint those out. And this is painting out Neko1 because I don't want that extraneous influence up there. It should not influence it at all. Sure, it's probably gone all the way up here somewhere, but so yeah, that's we often end up with this weird artifacting that we get when we paint skin weights, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest. I'm not a fan of doing this process at all because it's a hassle. So back to head control here, starting to look a bit better. Head control seems to be going down a little bit farther than I normally would expect. And you notice that there are some things that are doing some weird behavior under here. So I'm going to try to just smooth that out. Okay. Neck. Let's try it. It might be here, Neko1. I don't know a lot of people who say that they enjoy doing this, but if you are interested in becoming a technical director, this is certainly something that you will be faced with on a pretty constant basis. So for some reason my head control now has reached influence down here. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. I'm just going to go back to my default pose. I'm going to do this replace value again, replace 0, and get a smaller brush. Get rid of these values here. Now when I get rid of these values, they have to actually be reassigned to another joint influence. So it's got to be kind of careful how I do that. Echo 1. Just kind of going down and checking to see where there might be other problems. Shoulder root, for some reason, has found its influence up here now. This is, I think, the reason why I hate painting skin weights is, you know, why do things move around like this? I don't really know. They just do, and it's a real pain. So it's always constantly, you know, checking your model and verifying that you don't have weird things happening that you wouldn't expect to happen. Right, make sure the shoulder hasn't started creeping up there or anything. All right, so back to head control here. It's going to go to my add brush. I'll change my value to 0.1, and it's going to continue to smooth back here. And I'll go back to neck 02 and do the same thing. Hopefully not running into any more major issues. Now I'm just doing this with my mouse. You can do it with a Wacom tablet. Some people prefer it that way. I'm not really too fussed about it. The mouse works fairly well for me because I'm not doing, it doesn't really allow me to do great detail here. Seems some of this is crept up there. Replace 0. And back to add. Now the head, so this is a weird thing. I think what I'm going to do here, what I'm going to try to do is just, instead of replacing this, I'm just going to try to add the influence from neck 02 in that same area. So I'll put this to a value 0.1. And in fact, actually, I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick. I can start smoothing things here, but see, head control is now starting to affect these vertices here. And I don't really want that to be the case. I'm going to go in and go to my vertex view, and I'm going to try to see if I could paint that out with the component editor. So I'm just trying to keep track of where that starts. So right about there, vertex view. Drag a selection around here. All right. And I'm going to go into my component editor, which is under Windows, General Editors, Component Editor. I've even made a little box for it over here, a little icon. And what this tells me, if I go to the smooth skins, is on these particular vertices, which joints have influence on them. So and this is actually quite informative, because if I start seeing joints that I absolutely know should not have any influence there, then that's a bit of a problem. So like right shoulder definitely should have no influence there. It appears to be 0 all the way down. So it's just kind of appearing there for really no reason. But head control, that's the one I wanted to get rid of. So I'm going to click at the start there and start dragging down. And you can see we have some very minuscule weights that are happening here. And these ones I just want to set all to 0. So I'm going to click down at the bottom there, shift click, type in 0, and that's going to get rid of any influence from that particular joint. The rest of these are probably okay, so long as that left shoulder and right shoulder are in fact 0 all the way down, which it looks like. Same thing to do with root. Shoulder root, for some reason, is exerting influence here, and that's not good. So let's just turn those to 0 as well. Okay. So now let's just see what we get when we go back into our view here. So head control no longer has any extraneous values down there. Neck 02 looks okay. Neck 01 looks more or less okay. Not worried about what's going on over there. So just for the sake of kind of keeping things nice and clean, let's just mirror over the skin weights that we have already. So I'm going to go click on the mirror skin weights, which is found under skin, mirror skin weights. to my little icon here. And I'm just going to use my YZ axis, positive to negative, and these settings here. All right. Now, I always recommend that when you do this, you do it in this default pose. Don't try to mirror the skin weights when you're in a stretched pose, because it can cause sometimes things not to work as expected. So, all right. As I just continue on here, I'm just going to kind of work my way through the just the basic blending while I'm still in this default pose. Holding down Shift to smooth again, smoothing over this side here. Gradual transitions. And then down there. I'm not too worried about this being perfect yet. This is just a way to get some basic blending between the different skin weight sections. And left shoulder. Left shoulder, for some reason, is exerting influence onto these couple points here, which is not necessarily terrible, but just be aware that things do start to creep at times. So let's just see. Let's go back and verify that we don't have any weird stuff happening here. I might want to add, I'm going to go to my add mode, 0.1, and just in this little section here, just add a tiny bit of influence, just so that it doesn't end up losing any influence just at that one point. Neko 1. Well, this is a little bit off here. Just smooth that out, I guess. And Neko 1, shoulder root. Again, just some smoothing. Every time I change one thing, it seems to change other things. A little bit annoying. And left shoulder, more or less okay. All right, so, and again, one thing I like to do before I move on, oh, first off, here's root. Now, root really shouldn't have any influence whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my side view here, and I'm going to go into vertex mode, grab a fairly large section here, something that should have no influence from the upper head, for instance. Go back into my component editor and look at things like root, because this column here does have some tiny little values on it that I don't want to even be there, so I'm going to set those to 0. Now, Neko 1, Neko 2, that's all fine. Right shoulder, it's fine because it's gone across to the opposite side. And shoulder root is also fine. So that's one way to get rid of it. So again, root's got no influence. Okay. It's pretty decent. All right, so we're just going to mirror those weights again. Now, having laid down this basic part, it's always a good idea to save. Don't lose your work. So let's see what this looks like as I start to rotate the head back. So that's our farthest that we go, and you can see that there's some really interesting crushing that's going on there. This is looking kind of okay. Might be a little bit fat there, but definitely that section back there needs some help. I'm just going to start here real quick just to see if there's a problem with the topology. It's starting to get really stretched there. So I might want to go in and maybe add in a little bit more influence from the head here. So 0.1 on add, just to help this along a little bit. And then to smooth it out so I don't get any weird kind of crinkliness there. This is going to help later on too when I rotate the head forward, because I don't want I don't want to lose this section don't want it to be pushed up inside the jaw, which I've noticed can happen if I'm not careful. So back here, I'm just going to sort of unfold it a little bit. This is a big section that should be very hard, as in the sense that it's a skull, and we don't want it to feel like it's soft or anything like that. So curious to see, does it make more sense to add in a little bit more influence here from the skull itself? Let's see. What do we get when we do that? Maybe a little bit. But let's go to neck 02 here and just see if we can soften that a little bit as well. It's always about creating these gradual transitions usually. That's starting to look better. It's not perfect, but it's starting to look better, right? And the front's starting to look a bit better too. So this is something you have to do on all of your weights, right? And as you work your way down here, you're going to be playing around with the smoothing of this guy as well, just to make sure that it seems to transition nicely. Now, so if we go here, we start getting a nice soft, or actually not really soft, but just nice transition from the cranium down to that, starting to come along a lot nicer than it was, right? If we move forward, we notice is that we're starting to lose a little bit of the shape in here, which is not what we really want. So ultimately, I want to give more influence in this region to probably the jaw still, or to the head still. So I'm just going to come in here and paint a little bit more this way. Just kind of try to gradually pull that up. Okay. And I'm also going to come down to neck 02, and probably don't need any more influence from neck 02 there. Painting that out, smoothing this out. Neck 01 is probably the primary suspect here. So in fact, I might actually add in a little bit of neck 02 here. That's starting to look a bit better. All right. And you see it is a bit of a process, but it does eventually start coming along. So at this stage here, I'm not going to keep going through and finishing the rest of this because it will take a long time and it will be really boring to watch. But I do want to show you what a finished version of this looks like. So if I come into this other scene that I have here, this is the version that I have finished. And if we have a look at the transitions that we have here, oops, you can see that the head moves back really nicely. We have a pretty good preservation of volume and mass there. Ultimately, I might want to create something later on to help make it feel like there's actually more skin back here. So going up, that looks pretty good. And coming back down, notice how I'm trying to preserve the shape here. So that worked out well. And then from side to side, this is as if I was putting my ear down on my shoulder. This is a difficult one because it's not something that you can just solve with skin weights alone, at least not easily. You'll notice that we start getting this compression that happens here. And what that's due to is just skin weights on their own don't necessarily give me enough way to define how parts of the skin fold into other parts of the skin, for instance. What this requires is a specific kind of blend shape called a pose space deformer. And what a pose space deformer does is when you have a particular rotation, for instance, your head rotating down to your arm, or maybe as you're rotating your elbow and you have a bicep that comes forward and you don't want to lose any of the volume that occurs between your forearm and your bicep, you have to actually sculpt a separate shape that on its own looks really weird, but when applied to a character that's moving in a particular position, helps to make that rotation and helps to make that geometry look correct for that particular pose, which is why it's called a pose space deformer. In this case, I would sculpt a custom one to help fill in some of the gaps here and make it look like it's more natural. Now, ultimately, I don't think in my animation that I have anything that requires my head to go that far. And so if I have anything, it's probably that far, and that's fine as it is. You can see that there's not too much of a problem there. So just something to keep in mind. It depends on how much work you want to put into your model just to see. I also mentioned that back here at the back of the head, we could do something, and this is the same story here. If you look at, if I look at the back of my head, I notice that I actually do have a bit of bunching here, which is just tissue and probably fat and some muscle that I could create a custom pose space deformer just for this shape as well. And that would just make it a little bit more realistic. So yeah, the thing I want to show you here is that here's just an overview of what the skin weights look like across the full mesh. So here's my head control, right? You can see that that's mostly the head here, and goes down into the throat pretty far down. It's nice and smooth across. I have one here for jaw control because initially I thought I might be able to make use of it for a couple of my poses, but I have since decided not to use any joint-based posing. I'm just going to be doing blend shapes. So this one just has, it's there, but it has no influence anywhere. So you can ignore that one. So we had head control. Now neck 02 is, you notice that it's semi-transparent. So it's not full influence really anywhere. Neck 01 comes down here, goes around, like a little collar. And neck base goes down to the front, just over the corners, and then all the way across the back. So then, of course, what's left is the shoulder, which is also mirrored over here onto that side. And the root should have no influence. I notice here, actually, that it does have a little bit, and that can easily be painted out, which I will do. So yeah, it's always a good idea to go back and check your model because sometimes these weights do start to creep, as I've mentioned before.